As early as I can remember, the March on Washington was a significant picture in my mind. I grew up in the mid to late 60s. I was born in 1962, so I was barely a year old when it actually happened. But I remember seeing scenes of Dr. King and the marches and the riots in the late 60s, and obviously I do remember when he passed away. The first picture, though, that you would always see whenever you'd study Dr. King, and I've been reading since I was 4.5 years old, was the picture of the March on Washington. And the message in my mind was one person could create a movement that all these people could come together to really make something happen. And in my young mind, I remember thinking, that's powerful, even before I knew what power really was. Anytime I wonder whether or not I can do something, I think about the power of one that can incite and influence and inspire many to do positive things for a large group of people. And that in my mind is still the thing that is a great motivator when I think about the March on Washington. There's no question the march was a significant moment in history, and I do think that that march really created the ensuing success of the civil rights movement. And had it not been for the civil rights movement, I don't think that I would be an African American woman on Wall Street today. And I do think the most significant message about the march was really, we won't be the country that we were made to be and that we could be unless all of its citizens enjoyed the same kind of freedom and enjoyed equality. And I'd say that it's, obviously taken another 50 years before that message has really started to sink into everybody. But I think that it was enough at that point for us to then obviously have the actual Civil Rights Act, and for us to actually have affirmative action, and for us to make significant economic and professional strides towards equality. And so as a powerful African American woman, I think about all of the powerful African American women who were a part of that movement, albeit in the history books, in the background somewhat, because you hear more about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., you hear more about Ralph Abernathy, but now people are starting to talk about the significant influence of Dr. Dorothy Height and Fannie Lou Hamer, and the women who really mobilized the masses to get to Washington that day. So when I think about who I am and I think about the shoulders that I'm standing on, I think about those women who made it happen at a time when women didn't necessarily have obvious power, but certainly had the power and were great executors at that time. I think the March on Washington did create a consciousness within people at that time that they could and should be engaged. As you might imagine, there was a lot of fear, particularly in the Black community at that time, given what was going on, and rightly so. But I think once people could see that a march of that significance could happen without a lot of violence and have a positive outcome and make an impact on federal and state and city laws, I think that gave people courage at the individual level to do whatever they could in their communities, to stand up and own their power in their communities, to have that resistance, that nonviolent resistance, and to push forward. And it's no question, I think, for my generation, we certainly got the message that it was important to be able to give back. Because no question, as I said earlier, I'm standing on their shoulders. So in my mind, it is my responsibility and my obligation to let someone stand on mine, because things aren't 100% equal. They aren't entirely fair today. And the only way that we're going to get there is that we continue to do our part. And maybe it's not being a part of a large march, but maybe it is making sure you do as the best that you can do in whatever your career is, so that you will have the power to bring other people behind you, or that you can be involved in a philanthropic organization that will lift someone else up. Maybe that's your march today, but we all have that obligation to do that because of what they did 50 years ago.